Hi everyone, today we're going to be making this backpack, which is actually bigger than it looks. So we've got two big front pockets that I have filled up with some scrap fabric that I have, and the bag is closed with a snap closure in the front, and then when you lift the flap of the bag you're going to be seeing that we have used eyelets, and then there is a sort of tie-up system. Inside there is a lot of space, the bag is lined, we have a pocket against the back which is to put your computer in there, and I have put in here a big classifier of mine in which I have a lot of my patterns stored. That is pretty much it for the presentation of the bag. I'm going to show you right now the cutting plan of the shell fabric, and then you've got the lining fabric, and then you've got the supplies. Feel free to press pause to spend more time on them. So let me show you the pieces of the pattern. On the upper left corner we've got the front of the bag in the shell in orange and in the lining in a sort of quilted fabric. I'm going to be drawing the pocket placement later on the shell fabric. On the right we've got here the back of the bag cut in the shell fabric twice, because one part is going to be the back and one is going to be the inner pocket. We've got also the lining. Above these two parts, a small rectangle which is going to be bearing eyelets for the back. Then we've got here the side strap holders, these triangles cut twice. Then the front pocket, upper and lower part with their zippers cut twice. Then we've got the flap cut twice in shell fabric, some strap 4 centimeters wide and a closure. The bottom here cut in the shell and in the lining. Some more strap but only 2.5 centimeters wide with a strap slider. We need 2 of them. And finally some bias. So the first thing we're going to start with is making the front pockets. I've already made one here, so I'm going to make the other one now. We've got the upper part of the pocket, the lower part. I've already finished these 2 wedges, and I've also taken a little scrap part of the fabric in the bin. I think it's like 8 centimeters long. This part must be cut so it's as wide as your zipper. I've finished the edges of it, and I'm going to be sewing it at both ends of my zippers. So I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to have 2 pieces, one for each end. I fold my little strip and I'm going to pin it here at one end of my zipper, and same thing on the other end. And I will sew close to the edge. And this is what you should get. Okay, so I'm deciding on which side, the right or the left, I want my little zipper puller to be. I want it on the left. I'm gonna fold my zipper in half to mark the middle. I'm folding the lower part of my pocket in half as well to mark the middle. And I pin right sides together. And I sew. I'm gonna be using a normal straight stitch with my zipper presser foot. This is what I'm getting. I'm going to be adding the upper part of the pocket to the lower part. And I sew. Alright, once it's done, I'm going to press down a little bit. I don't know why I forgot to sew here at the beginning of the fabric. I'm going to correct that. I'm going to press down and I'm going to top stitch. Alright, I cut what's extra of these strips at the ends of my zipper, and now I'm going to take care of the corners of the pocket. I fold right sides together and I sew 1 centimeter from the edge, and I do this on all 4 corners. Once it's done, what you can do to prevent the fabric from fraying is finish the edge with your overlocker or with a zigzag stitch. You can also cover the seam allowance with some bias tape. I'm not going to do any of these because my fabric is not going to fray. now I finished the edges of my pockets with my overlocker. As I said, it's not necessary because the fabric doesn't fray. However, I want a nice clean finish when I open the pocket as much as possible. And also I'm going to be using the width of the seam to know where to fold the edges of my pocket to sew it onto the front of my bag. You're going to see in a little bit. And this is the result. Okay, now that we have done the front pockets, we're going to be able to sew these on the front of the bag. I have marked the pocket placement with some chalk. I've also pressed down the edges here of my pockets on about 1 centimeter. I'm going to pin my pockets on the pocket placement, and once it's done, I'm going to sew close to the edge all around them. And this is what I'm getting. And once I've added the 2 pockets, this is what it looks like. I am now going to take care of the front straps that are attaching the closure. One of the strap is attached to the front of the bag and the other one is attached to the flap, which is why even though the flap is sewed to the back of the bag, I'm going to take care of it now. So in this video, you might be seeing me hesitate a bit as regard to how long exactly my straps should be, but I figured it out and I adjusted the sewing pattern so that you would get my final measurements. If you have a closure, a front closure that is bigger or smaller than mine, you might have to proceed to some minor adjustments. So just, yeah, be aware of that. I'm going to take my flaps. I'm gonna create a notch in the middle. Then I'm gonna take my strap here. It is 4 centimeters wide. And I made a small mistake here that I realized afterwards. So what you want to do is not what I did right now. But if you do the same as me, no worry, it's not going to be a big deal. So what you want to do is cut a piece of strap that is 6.5 centimeters long. Seam allowance is included. It's in the sewing pattern as well, in case you have a doubt or in case I corrected things afterwards. And you want to have the strap go through your closure. You fold the strap so that you've got 2 layers of them, and then you attach the 2 layers of strap to the middle of the curved edges of the flap. Once you have the 2 parts of the flap pinned together, right sides together with the strap sandwiched in between, you're going to sew here all along the curved edges. Okay, the straight edge remains untouched. Let's trim this curved edge. I turn inside out and I am going to press down. This is what I get once I press down. So again, your result should be a bit different because you should have attached the male part of the closure to the flap. Oh no, this is the female part. This is where I inserted the female part of the closure. Okay, now we're going to take care of the opposite part of the strap that bears the opposite part of the closure. You want to cut a 36 centimeter long piece of strap. You're going to place it in the middle between the 2 pockets. So here you see me transfer the markings concerning the front strap placement with chalk. I pin my strap. And I'm gonna sew all around these edges. So you can see here that I have sewed the strap to the front of the bag. I'm going to be adding the left part of the closure to the strap. So now, as you can see, the edge of the strap are unraveling a bit, so I need to seal them by hemming it basically, which is something that I'm going to be doing at the very end of the project once all the pieces are sewed together, the flap included. Alright, still working with the front, we are now going to add the lining to the front. So you lay the two fabrics wrong sides together, and I'm simply gonna be sewing the two layers together in the seam allowance. Here's the result. Moving on, I'm going to add bias tape to the upper edge only of this front part. Once the bias tape has been sewed, I'm going to fold this edge on 3.5 centimeters. I'm going to sew 3 centimeters from the edge of the fabric. You can see the seam here now that it's done. And on the inside, this is the way it looks. And now in this upper part, you can pinch holes for the eyelets. You can make as many as you want, you don't have to follow my indications on the pattern, but what you must do in any case is have a total number of holes all around the bag that is even. And now you see me add the eyelets to the upper part of the front of the bag. Alright, the front of the bag is over. We can now move on to the back of the bag. The flap is basically already done, so we're going to concentrate on other parts, and the first one will be those little triangles here that are going to come on either side of the bag and that are going to bear the sliders. Okay, so I'm going to fold them right sides together. I'll pin along the longest edge of the triangle. If it's not already done, you want to melt the edges of the straps because they tend to unravel. I made a mistake when I took the video. This is my mistake here. So this is the correction. Okay, the corners have been trimmed a little bit, but don't pay attention to that. So you want to fold right sides together. Okay, I'm gonna add a pin. Now I take my strap. I'm gonna insert it already through the slider. I'm going to sew these two layers together so they don't move. I insert it this way between the two layers of my triangles. And I'm going to come and sew all these layers together here along this edge. Okay, once it's done, this is what I get. Remove the pins and I turn inside out. And now I'm going to top stitch on the triangle to secure the strap even more like this. Okay, my two parts are done. I'm going to take one part, which I'm going to place here on the side of the bag. You're going to see there is the placement indicated on the pattern. And then I will sew the part to the back in the seam allowance. And this is what you get. Okay, let's take care of the rest of the back of the bag. We're going to first concentrate on the upper part of the back of the bag, which is going to bear the eyelet. So I have added some interfacing to this part. I'm going to fold it in half like so, and you can't see with the distance, but I've actually added some small markings to indicate the placement of my eyelets. I made here a small mistake because I chose to have an odd amount of holes here in the back, and the number should have been even. This has been corrected on the pattern. Now I'm going to concentrate a little bit on the straps. I'm going to take the strap part, which is going to be the handle of the bag, and I'm going to place it on the back 4 centimeters apart, so 2 centimeters on either side of the center. Now I'll take my shoulder straps. They're 80 centimeters long if I'm not mistaken. It's all in the pattern, and I will pin them right next to the handles. Once it's pinned, I'm going to sew to the back in the seam allowance. Alright, it's done. So I'm just going to pin the straps here so they don't move when I'm sewing. Let's take our flap. We're going to lay it right side against right side. I match the center, I pin, and I sew in the seam allowance. This is what I get. I'm going to take my upper back part and I'm going to add it here to the edge, and I'm going to sew. This time I will respect 1 centimeter of seam allowance. Okay, this is the result. I want to tell you here to top stitch here in the back, because I didn't do it and I had to do it later. It was not a big deal, but it's just 1% more elegant to do it now. Now, moving on to the lining of the back, on which we've got a pocket to sew. So this is the lining here, and we're going to have a pocket here like this on top of it. So let me first hem this pocket like so. You just fold the fabric once on 2 centimeters, and you fold again on another 2 centimeters, and then we sew respecting 1.5 centimeters of seam allowance. Wrong side facing up, and I'm gonna lay my pocket on it. This is just a simulation. We're not gonna sew, it's just to know the placement of this little strip of strap on which we're gonna add some snap buttons. So I have sealed one end here, and I've already made a hem on the opposite side. You're gonna find all the proper measurements on the pattern, because here I was figuring them out a bit. I was hesitating and stuff, but for you it should be more simple. I'm going to add some interfacing here in the back, where I'm going to punch holes in a bit to add my snap buttons. I lay my strap on my pocket, and I'm going to punch holes while the 2 layers are on top of one another to make sure the 2 parts of the buttons are really in front of one another. And this is what you should get. Now is the time to add my pocket and my lining to the back of the bag. I fold my lining in half and I mark the middle. I'm going to take my little piece of strap which bears my snap buttons, and I'm going to pin it to the back of the bag in the center. I then add my lining, which I pin as well, and I'm going to sew these layers together. This is what I get. I'm going to top stitch here. Now I'm going to pin my lining to the back, the shell fabric. Then I add my pocket on top, and I'm going to sew all the layers together in the seam allowance. This is here me realizing that I should have top stitch here in the back. So because I indicated earlier, you probably have done it already, but me, I'm going to do it right now. And this is what I get. Let's put these parts aside and now take care of the bottom. Very straightforward. I'm gonna lay my shell fabric and my lining wrong sides together. I'm gonna pin these 2 layers together, and I'm gonna sew them in the seam allowance all around. Now I take my front, and I'm gonna pin my front to the bottom of the bag, right sides together. I sew in the seam allowance. After I sewed these 2 layers together in the seam allowance, I actually finished the edges with my overlocker. It's not necessary at all, it's just to make it easier to add the bias tape, which I'm gonna do just now. This is what I get once the bias tape has been added. Now I'm going to grab my back and I'm going to pin it right sides together to the rest of the bag, and we're going to sew all around. Once I sewed the layers, I also finished the edges here. Once again, it's not necessary, it's just to make it easier to add the bias tape. little close up here to show you how I dealt with the edges of the bias tape. I basically fold and fold again. And this is what I get. It's not super clean the way I did it. You might be able to do something cleaner. But yeah. Alright, this is what I get once the bias tape has been added. I'm gonna turn the bag inside out. And now come the finishing touches. I'm gonna take care of this part here, which for you shouldn't be anything to do because normally the parts are tucked inside the flap. So I'm gonna fold these parts like this and then I sew by hand. And this is what I get. I also need to hem the shoulder straps, so I fold once and a second time and then I sew. I need to hem the front strap as well. And finally, I need to make this sort of cord which is gonna pass through the eyelets. So what you do is you have this long strip of fabric. I'm gonna mark the middle. I fold one edge against this middle, another edge against this middle. I press down and then I fold again in half. For the ends, I'm gonna fold like this and then I fold again. Sorry, I'm not describing these steps with a very sophisticated lexicon. So once everything is folded, you can go to your sewing machine and you can sew this little cord close to the edge. Once you're done with the cord, you can insert it through the eyelets of your bag and then make some little knots at the end of them. Good job! Alright, I hope you liked it and see you soon for a new tutorial. Bye!